to have this Q&A session tonight, and we had the actual airing of the lectures were on the 18th, just a few days ago. And just as a little bit of background, again, I mentioned this in the introductory spiel I gave, but we've been giving some sort of general 1-hour talks that I've been giving about business-related things to doctors, mostly to dermatology residents in training. And Ed Zabowski and I were talking about this around a year ago, and Ed said, well, maybe we ought to do like a full day session. And we started talking about it. I said, well, yeah, let's do that. Many of the people on this call I have a very good relationship with the Dallas Roundtable, and I basically sent out an email, and probably 2/3 of the group said, yeah, I'll be happy to participate in this. So really grateful that you guys were willing to do that. And we came up with a great panel of people. These are extremely valuable talks for young physicians in training, or even physicians out of their training and then out for a few years. Even their significant others need to know this. But basically, as all of you guys know, we get zero information, and usually in college, medical school, we get nothing. In postgraduate training, we get nothing. So you get out, you go into practice, you're basically like a deer in the headlights. You don't know anything. And I actually experienced that myself. And so I went back and re-educated myself in a couple of ways by getting a couple of MBA degrees and even a JD degree. Most people think I'm totally crazy, but I feel like I've educated myself enough that I realize how important it is for these guys to kind of know that. So we said, well, let's see if we can, instead of a 1-hour lecture, let's do a full day talk with world-class experts in these fields that do this every day for a living. And we have some fantastic lectures that are posted online. They're going to be online forever, basically. We may even post some additional talks. There may be some others that say, well, I've watched some of these, I'd like to contribute. So we can add to this and make it kind of a library. And it is a resource. Anybody that does view these talks, the people that are on this panel, they're the ones you want to go to if you have questions. If you have a need for, say, insurance, Maria Hawthorne's is like a fantastic resource for that. If you need cybersecurity or anything about the internet, Justin McCorkle, Mark Spalding, estate planning, Mary Nix, you need legal advice, et cetera. So all these people are really great folks to reach out to. And I can't recommend or endorse them enough. Kim Campbell, for example, she does everything from soup to nuts about setting up a practice. So without any further ado, we have people can ask questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. If you want to put something in the chat box, more than happy to do that. We have some questions that have been asked of us ahead of time that we're prepared to go through, and we'll start doing those. Brand has got a list of those questions. So as the MC, he's going to open these questions up, and the panel is going to answer them to the best of their ability. So Brand, I'll pass the baton to you.
Yeah, I don't know about MC, but thank you. So we have, again, the majority of the faculty on, and so we have some basic questions that were submitted, and then we also, hold on a sec, I'm accepting one more person in. There we go. So the first one is for Michael Smith in banking. Michael gave a talk on kind of he's with Bank of America, and so it says, what is the typical loan amount for a startup practice, and how long does the process take?
That's a great question. It's going to vary depending on specialty, but I would say a good range for a startup practice is in the $350,000 to $450,000 range. Typical timelines, I guess if you're talking about from the time when you start submitting documents to the time where you can start getting money out, probably about 2 weeks for underwriting to submit documents and go through the approval process. And then from the time that you have a lease and a space picked out and you have your lease signed and you're ready to start moving forward to start paying for things like the lease deposit and first month's rent, typically you can start getting money out within a week. And we give you a full 10-month project period to use the money for the loan to start paying for things like TIs and renovations, equipment and furniture, marketing budgets, working capital, things like that. So From the time that you start having a conversation about potentially getting a loan to the very end to when you start making your first payment, typically it can be all the way up to a year from the time you have to make your first loan payment on the loan.
Hey, Michael, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
A lot of times we hear from the bank or whatever, they say, well, you might be a good candidate for the SBA loan, Small Business Association loan. Would any of these guys be potentially candidate for that, or is that something you would recommend against doing? I know that can be kind of a slow process, but in some cases it might be more beneficial.
So typically we offer both. We offer conventional and SBA loans. We usually would try to stick with a conventional loan because the process is a lot faster because there's no SBA involved. And usually your interest rates are better and your loan fees are lower. So if we can, we're going to try to do a conventional loan, but there are some scenarios where there are specific loans that aren't covered under conventional financing. Like if you're wanting to buy a building at the same time as doing a startup practice, we would typically do that through SBA. Or if you were, an established doctor that wanted to buy land and build a building from scratch, that would probably go through SBA. But otherwise, we try to stick to conventional because it is lower interest rates and lower fees. So a lot easier process.
So if you guys hear about SBA, you just heard the best thing is a conventional loan.
Yes, if you can go conventional, yes, absolutely.
So I'll add a follow-up question too, if you don't mind. This is Dr. Zabowski.
Yes.
So is that a lump sum amount you distribute, or do they draw on that like a line of credit? Because there's a difference in the end between how much they'll actually pay for that for the cost of that money.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in the project phase, you are going to be assigned a dedicated project manager that is in charge of helping manage your budgets and also paying your invoices. So anytime you need to take money out, whether it be for some renovations or buying some equipment or furniture, you'll send the invoices in directly to your project manager and approve the payments. And then we make those payments for you directly out of the loan. And at the very end of the loan, your final loan amount is the total that you ended up using, not what you were initially approved for necessarily. So you could have been approved for 450,000, but if you only ended up using 300,000 out of that loan, then your final loan amount will be the 300,000 that you use, and your payments will be calculated based on that. So similar to like a line of credit.
So for the residents here, you should understand that average number he gave is not something you should be intimidated by. So when I opened my own practice, which has been some time ago, and of course we could talk about the time value of money here, but when I started up mine for a little less than half of that average number that he gave. So if you plan carefully and you take advice from the right people, you're austere and conservative in your planning to begin with, you can start and grow a practice and not put yourself under too much mental strain for the amount of money you borrowed, yet still have the ability to use the services the Bank of America provides to get yourself started and have some leeway to either side of those numbers.
Yeah, and I can add to that. So we see a lot of variation in the loan amounts because it's going to be situational. Like there could be a space that's a shell that needs full TI and full renovations to be done. So you might need a little bit more. Or there could be a space that maybe was occupied by a dentist or a previous doctor before, and it's already laid out perfectly for a medical office. You might not need as much. So as well as considering what type of equipment you want to buy. Some of the lasers are more expensive than others. Some of the equipment is more expensive than just regular equipment. So yeah, it definitely varies. There are times where we could even go above that. There's some doctors that need 500 or 600,000. But yeah, generally 350 or 450 is around the range that we see.
Great, thanks.
Any other
Great answer.
questions for Michael? Actually, we just got a question in the chat from Marissa here in Dallas. It says, this is actually for Chase, and Chase works for Baker Tilly and is a CPA. And it says, question is what are your tax and accounting tips for us during residency, especially if we get 1099s for various things like conference stipends and market research surveys? Are we able to deduct anything as business expenses?
Yeah, happy to chime in, and thanks for having me, and nice to see everybody today. And so short answer is yes. You should be tracking those expenditures in a residency capacity. I'd recommend at minimum setting up a separate bank account that tracks all of your business related expenses, has a separate bank account, either debit card or credit card associated with it. It just helps for organizing that information. On a minimum end of the spectrum, you want to have some sort of an Excel tracker that's starting to track those expenditures. Certainly, as that starts to get to a point where it's more voluminous, going ahead and being proactive and setting up some sort of a basic QuickBooks file or an accounting file that helps you track those things. But relevant expenditures for your pursuit of earnings are still deductible to the extent you're getting 1099 income. I can elaborate a bit. I'm sure there may be some other questions around structures and when to set up an entity and otherwise. And there will be a point in time where that's important. And from a risk liability standpoint, I'm not an attorney, but we could talk about that a little bit too. But at a certain point in time, your ordinary income from executing healthcare services, you may debate creating what we call an S corp, which helps eliminate some of the self-employment tax. There is an added cost to administering that through just filing of additional tax returns and otherwise. And so typically we'd say when your earnings are about 250,000 or more, it becomes highly accretive to look at that self-employment arbitrage of an S corp. Prior to that, it adds an additional administrative burden. So I can elaborate on that, but I don't want to occupy the entire time. But short answer to the immediate question, yes, relevant expenditures, travel, mileage to and from other practice areas, even a home office to some extent, to the extent you're using that, cell phones, your relevant business expenditures associated with the pursuit of that income are still deductible even as a 1099 contractor during your residency.
Marissa, do you have any follow-up questions to this? You might be on mute. Oh, there we go.
Hi. So obviously like an S corp, like that's for 250,000. That's not like what I'm making here with a conference stipend and a market research survey. Just because it's like once it becomes 600, you have to report it. So I just didn't know if there was any ways to like just immediately save on that with like taxes, if there's like how traveling, like I guess, can be deducted through that.
Yeah, so the short answer is that regardless of the amount of income, if you receive a 1099, you'll have to file what we call a Schedule C on your personal tax return that will report the gross amount of those earnings. All of those earnings, net of expenses, are subject to what we call self-employment taxes. That once you get up over 125,000 is only subject to about a 3.8% Medicare tax. Everything up to that point is subject to FICA. And so I say all that in that when you start hearing about a lot of physician practices structuring in the form of an S corp, they're trying to help save that self-employment tax arbitrage. It's all taxed the same way whether you have an S corp or don't. And so that's where the additional cost of setting up an entity, filing additional tax returns, et cetera, could be several $1,000s a year. And so to the extent you're only saving X amount of $100, your rate arbitrage, your benefit arbitrage on that starts to diminish. And so as it stands right now, until you get up over that point that I mentioned, the self-employment tax savings doesn't necessarily help cover the administrative cost of setting up an S corp and filing additional returns. So in the meantime, you would still want to report the gross amount of those earnings, but you would want to track any relevant expenditures, which again can include generally anything associated with the pursuit of that income other than personal related expenses. So your primary residence in totality is not deductible. But if you have a dedicated space in your home set up as an office to help you administer your work, that could be one thing that would be deductible. Business use mileage, to the extent that you're traveling to and from other locations other than your primary place of office, those types of things can be deductible. Cell phones, if you've got specific uniforms and other types of things, being in a medical profession that are required, that is not like your normal day wear, those types of things are deductible. And so happy to get together offline and try to send you as comprehensive a list as we can of what would be deductible or not. But yes, 1099 income, you can take relevant expenses that aren't reimbursed and deduct those things. Once you get up to a point of earnings that the self-employment tax starts to be impactful, that's where these S corps and other types of legal entity structures would be helpful in terms of helping reduce some of that self-employment tax arbitrage. So hopefully that's helpful.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chase. Any other follow-up questions for Chase? Cyber security. Everywhere in the news, you see people getting hacked, etc. And when I was watching Justin's video, he talked about having a mindset of having best practices. Justin, can you elaborate on kind of some of the misses that potentially happen in smaller practices? Because oftentimes the small guys don't think they'll be attacked And usually they're the ones that are being, subject the most. Can you comment more on that?
Sure. Yes, there's definitely a lot of misses that are made in small operations that are easy to fix. I mean, some of the best stuff that small practices can do are the most obvious things that just kind of inconvenience people a little bit. So we just try to find ways to work around them. One of the things I mentioned in the video that we did was just multi-factor authentication. You'd be amazed how many breaches go back to just, well, it was inconveniencing the executives, or it was inconveniencing the primary physicians, and they didn't want to have to do the MFA every time they were logging into something. And so they just disabled it, or they told their IT person, I don't want to deal with that. And that's all fine and good up until it's not. So a little thing like that, making sure that your devices are set behind a firewall and things of that nature. I tried to keep the conversation and the recording from getting into the weeds, because I know that if you're not really into all of this stuff, if you haven't messed with cybersecurity or IT very much, it just like immediately our eyes glaze over. No one wants to hear about it. It's pretty much just a thing we don't want to mess with. But what I was really encouraging, just a mindset of humility, that it's really important that you value the privacy of your clients. You know that when it comes to their private medical information, you're not going to go and talk to your neighbor and tell, oh, I had Bob in my office the other day and he's dealing with this stuff over here. Well, it's just as important when it comes to your network security to have that mindset, because there are people that want private identifying information. Maybe they don't care what Bob's infection is, but they care about Bob's social security number. They care about Bob's account information. They want the different type of information of your client so that they could sell it or they could do malicious activities with it. They also want access to your bank account. So just one of the simple things, because I've seen this repeatedly, so I'll just make special note of it. Talk to your bank, and they need to have a phone call in order to authorize a wire transfer. I mean, that's just as simple as it is. I know that sounds obvious, but I've seen so many small physicians have major issues because their banking information, usually because they didn't have MFA turned on. And so someone was able to steal some account credentials. They logged in, they found banking information, then they activated a wire transfer, and the bank either missed it this time, or they were able to change some invoicing information with one of your vendors. Whatever it is, all different types of things happen, but wire goes out. Well, have a policy with your bank that no wires happen unless there is a phone call to authorize that. And just little things like that, you can call your bank and they have practices that can put in place over your account to help protect the actual bank information. But just going in with that mindset of humility, that this isn't my area of expertise. This is not something you have gone to school for, right? So instead, trust the professionals. Bring in some individuals. Your MSP typically has some best practices to recommend, but you also want to be double checking them, having security assessments done by an independent source, things like that, to just always be mindful that it can happen to you. It happens all the time. Most of the time, it never makes it to the news. So don't think just because you didn't hear about it in the news that it won't happen. Just keep that mindset of humility, trust the professionals, and it'll be all right.
So now
Thank
I
you,
have a
Justin.
question. I have a question for you. Is it worth it to completely segregate guest Wi-Fi if you're going to provide it on a completely separate router, or are your internal router settings sufficient enough to keep them out of your system?
Well, you should have a firewall, and a firewall is going to be sufficient, a good firewall, a commercial, not something you picked up off the shelf at Best Buy or something like that for a home office. But with a commercial firewall, you can set up separate networks. I mean, obviously, I'm into cyber and stuff like that. So, but here at my home, I have a separate guest network that runs through my firewall. I don't even want guests that come into my house that we might know to be able to get access to my business network. So I've got a business network, I've got a kids network, I have a just home for general IoT stuff network, and then I have a guest network. Keeping those things separated will help a lot from people being able to just even sniff out the traffic that's on the network. So I don't trust basic routers. I don't think you should trust them. There's no track record there. Those devices are not made for that. So go get a commercial firewall, ideally get through your MSP so that they actually know how to configure it well and put that traffic in separate networks.
Quick follow-up to that too, Justin. What if you get, God forbid, a ransomware attack and somebody in your office has clicked on something and you get this message, we're closing. And I had this happen to a friend of mine, actually, a doctor and small practice. And somebody came in and they clicked and they had to pay the ransom. They did all this kind of stuff. What would you recommend if somehow you are a target of a ransomware attack?
Well, I mean, first thing I'll say is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? You are going to be far better off being proactive and having a good EDR, which I know you don't care about acronyms, endpoint detection and response platform that they've gotten really, really good at stopping ransomware attacks because they automatically see something encrypting and they say, no, we don't allow encryption unless it's specifically authorized. So I've even seen, this actually was in the medical field. I've seen some individuals trying to use a legitimate encryption program. They were going to redo some encryption in their network, but the EDR shut it down. And they had to go through the EDR platform to allow to whitelist this particular encryption protocol so that it could be done. That's what you want. So using those good tools, most good MSPs are now offering EDR tools as an upgrade. So you get away from regular antivirus, move to EDR, and you will go a long way toward preventing ransomware. If ransomware happens, then the truth is that I can't comment on, I mean, what you need to do immediately is call your support. You need to do everything you can to try to get people involved immediately to remediate. But that could be all different levels of severity. You want to move fast, obviously. So have an incident response plan already drawn up. You should know exactly the phone numbers of the people you're going to call. Here are the people to notify. Here's the emergency hotline for this. If this happens, call these people right now. Here are your steps. It would be wise as well to have a phone number for a cyber attorney. If you are involved in something where data may have been leaked, you will have to have an attorney involved, and your typical general practice attorney probably will not be sufficient. You're going to need a cyber attorney to be able to comment on notifications and all those types of things. So go ahead and do the hard work now of having the list of people that you contact. Know who your IT support is. Know who your cyber attorney would be in that type of incident. Know your steps. Here is the plan of action, and you'll go a long way toward not freaking out when that day comes. You'll be able to respond appropriately.
That's a great answer. And for those of you listening, he's the guy. If you need cybersecurity, call him.
Thank you.
So great answer.
So now what's the difference if you have your records stored on the cloud? Do people like Google or Amazon that provide a large amount of those web services, do they now provide that EDR automatically, or do you have to ask for it? Does it have to be incorporated into your software? How does it work? Or are you just safer being in-house?
Well, I don't want to give a one-size-fits-all answer. I think it depends. But as far as are those services being provided by Google or Amazon or whoever? No, they're not. There are different things you can add on for security, but you're not going to get some automatic, we're monitoring your network and investigating alerts or whatever. That is definitely not involved. All it is somebody else's computer. The cloud is just somebody else's computer that you can access from anywhere. So it's super convenient. It's good for a lot of things, but it's not a guarantee of security by any means. If the credentials to log into that are compromised, then anybody can log into it. So you want MFA turned on. It's just like if you're trying to log into your home office. So you still want the right controls set up in front of those things. You want to have logs of who's logging in and when, so that you even know. All of those things can be additional services sometimes, but I would highly recommend that you link up with a good MSP that you trust to help kind of start out managing those things appropriately, so that as the environment matures and develops, you don't have just things sitting around. Oh, I forgot I put all of this personal identifying information over here in this Google Cloud account that may not have even ever been HIPAA compliant, depending on how it was structured and set up. So just avoid that if you can. And I know it sounds like a lot, but I promise it's bite-sized and easy, especially when you're a small shop, because usually these MSPs charge by the seat. So if it's just you and a couple of people, or you and an EA, or even if it's just you, you're only going to pay by the seat. So you're better off starting off early with that mindset of, here's something I don't know much about. I need to have some people involved that know a little bit more about not only the legal side of how to protect the data with compliance in place, but also how do we make sure that those little things don't happen, like an attack that hits you with ransomware and shuts you down.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. The next question was actually emailed to me a few days ago, actually. I've labeled it as investing in kind of general finance. So I believe Mark Spalding and Dr. Zabowski, if y'all could chime in, or really anybody else could chime in too. It says, I'm about to finish residency and want to get started on the right foot saving for retirement. Do you have any suggestions on how to best get started?
Yeah, I'll give a stab at that initially. And again, great seeing everybody. Thanks for having me. Well, the very first thing that I would do, and probably the lowest hanging fruit, is if there is a 401k or other retirement plan offered through your work. That is the easiest to set up through your paycheck. It's automatically deducted from your paycheck before tax. So these are tax deferred monies that are going to go into that account, and you're able to contribute a certain amount per year towards that. The investment plan that is available for you in a 401k is not the most robust, but it does allow you to invest aggressively enough at a younger age that you can dial it up, mostly equities, see robust returns, and then if for some reason later on down the road you leave that place of employment, you'll be able to roll those 401k monies into a rollover IRA, which will broaden your investment platform, so to speak, and give you access to a lot more types of investments. But that's probably the easiest place to get started with retirement planning.
What if you're not an employee, Mark? What if you've got your own practice and you don't really have a paycheck per se coming from somebody else, that you're just you're eating what you kill? How do you set something up that way?
Yeah, so that's a great question. If you're not an employee and you're your own shop, so to speak, you can set up something called a solo K or a solo 401k. It's the same sort of investment, but it's not offered through your employment. It's something that you set up through your own company. You can also do SEP plans, SEP IRA, which is another way of deferring your earnings into a retirement account, a tax deferred retirement account, so that you can start saving that way. You can also, obviously, you can open up an individual traditional IRA, and depending on your situation, if you are in a situation where, let's say, for example, you are in a lower tax bracket now. I know this doesn't typically apply to physicians, but if, say, for example, you're in a lower tax bracket now than you anticipate being at the age of retirement, you might take advantage of a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, which allows you to pay taxes on retirement monies up front at your lower tax rate, and all of the growth on that investment will happen tax-free. It's not even tax deferred anymore because you already paid the taxes on it. And so all of the growth in that account grows tax-free, so that later in your life, when you go to withdraw that money at a higher tax rate, you're not going to be taxed on that money. So it doesn't even count against your income.
So you pay 10% tax when you're 25. When you're our age, you're paying like 40% tax. So do that.
Right.
That's
exactly
a good plan. That's a great answer. Thank you.
So let me just add a little bit here for the resident, the graduating resident that asked the question. So the most important thing you can do is educate yourself in advance. Do not go investing in things that you don't understand. When you go to work for someone else, there's a wide variety of choices that you'll be offered, even when inside your 401k. Some of them offer a lot of different funds or even stocks that you can invest in. Some of them have relatively few numbers of things that you can invest in. But it's one of your 401k or your 403b plan, depending on who you work for, are one of the few tax shelters left available to you to make use of the power of compound interest, whether you're an employee or you're building, your retirement money on your own. So the best thing you can do up front is to try to maximize the benefit of that, pay down any debt you have, because surely if you have student loans, they're a giant overhang, and you're paying a large amount of interest on those. And then start to educate yourself not only about what you need to invest in within your 401k or retirement plan, but other possibilities that are available to you as you go along, and you be able to acquire more money. But definitely be aware of not falling for a sales pitch and investing in something you don't understand. Clay can tell you, we know doctors that have gone bankrupt, thinking they were going to get rich next year, putting money where it shouldn't have been. And they found out that if they had educated themselves, they would not have been looking at a large loss.
And I'll just add one quick point, since I heard taxes mentioned 25 times or so over the retirement planning is one of the most magical tax planning tools, in that most deductions require you to spend $1 to save 30 cents in tax, or whatever your effective tax rate is. So back to Marissa's question earlier, when you're incurring expenses around travel or business use autos or office space, leases, et cetera, your tax benefit of that is whatever your effective tax rate is. So you spend $1 to save X amount of cents in tax. So there's got to be this accretive value that exists when you're going and incurring these expenditures that allow you to effectively generate more revenue to make them accretive in general. Retirement planning is one of the kind of magic bullets of tax planning that allows you to spend that $1 to save 30 cents in tax today, but that other 70 cents on the dollar, so to speak, goes into an account for your benefit in retirement. So retirement planning is a highly effective tax planning tool in general. But
yeah, just completing the circle on that as well. One of the things I touched on in the video is the fact that physicians are very high earning, tend to be high earning, but time poor. And so adding being a financial expert and a tax expert to your already busy schedule is often a daunting and difficult task to do. And so I encourage you to reach out to a financial advisor to talk about them about your specific situation, because no two situations are the same. Obviously, to the extent that you have student loans that you need to pay back, that should be incorporated into a financial plan. It's one of the services, one of the many services that we offer here at our private wealth management group. But if you have any questions about your specific situation, I encourage you to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Next question is for Kim Campbell with the Dermatology Authority. It says, I liked your overview of starting my own practice. Do you have any, let me just read it exactly. It says, can you provide a task list should I decide to go out on my own? Or do you have like little bullets on how to properly do this?
We definitely do. And actually we work with the Bank of America on a lot of this, getting them the right consultants and the right people in their area. So yeah, if they email me directly, that's Kim at the Dermatology Authority. I know it's long, but it's pretty easy. And we have a ton of articles on clubderm.com where a lot of the dermatologists that have started their own practice have a lot of tips as well. That they email us, we'll give them like an overview. But every situation is a little bit different. The most important part is figuring out where you want to be, and then hire your team, which right now you have so many experts on this panel. You'll need each and every one of them through this journey.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim. Kim is highly networked within the industry. So, whether you're
one thing I want to kind of follow up though is that today there's a lot of private equity firms trying to get young dermatologists to come work for them and join them. And as a dermatologist or as a doctor for that matter, as Mark said, your asset is big. You're valuable. A lot of these companies say, well, these docs aren't very business savvy. We're going to use them kind of like pawns. Realize that the value that you've acquired by all the training that you've done, the skills that you've acquired and everything, that's a very, very valuable asset. And they use the fact that you may be in debt from a student loan or something like that, and fear and this kind of thing to kind of almost take advantage of you. So never forget the value you've created by your training, skill that you've acquired. And if you're a dermatology resident, I mean, you're like super primo because it's so hard to get into that field. In our residency program, we had like 300 applicants for 3 positions. And so, just remember that don't sell yourself short. You may be in debt, but eventually you work with some of the things that your panel has told you to do. You'll get out of that. You'll be doing well, and you'll be needing Chase to tell you how to like minimize your taxes instead of, worrying about.
I really want to add to that, because we've worked with thousands of dermatologists that opened up their own practices. Nobody says, I wish I never did it. You know what they say? I wish I did it sooner.
Yeah, you should never be scared of opening your practice. I say that over and over again. Never let fear be the thing that makes your decision for you. I know Mark Noble's on this call. He can probably comment on that. And Colonel Don can comment on that as well. Fear should never be the driving thing that you make your decision based on, ever.
And if any of you guys want to talk to some of the dermatologists that have done it in the last couple of years and are super, they can give you tips, and they can reassure you that that was the right thing to do. We can connect you with them.
So the residents should know you've heard a lot of good stuff already in this call, but what Clay just told you is the most important thing that you're going to hear today about people or individuals or corporations or companies preying on you, trying to get their hands on your board certification for dermatology for their own uses. So those people that she's saying, and I was one of them, that went out on their own, I was only out 2 years and wished I'd have done it 10 years sooner. So she's absolutely correct.
Yes.
I would say that the business world, when they look at the MD, what they think it means more dough. That they can go after that. So
the next series of questions, I'm going to involve two folks, Mark Noble and Don Taylor, because they both gave really good lectures on leadership. It says this is more for Mark, and then I'll have and Mark and Don, feel free to chime in, and then Don, I got a specific question for you also. It says, why will I be different, more equipped for business because I work with you? And that's for Mark Noble and potentially Don.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. Everybody, I believe, in business wants to make progress. It doesn't matter whether people are doing a great job at work, whether they're easy to get along with, whether they're great leaders, poor leaders, whether they're capable of leading. But everybody wants to make progress. And so the way we teach leadership is that leadership has to be intentional. And we teach people to be intentional, and we teach people to be intentional about creating a vision for where they want to go, to have set goals and where they want to go, and to properly be able to socialize those ideas with people and get input from the people around you. The old 20th century leadership was more centered around where you are on an org chart. I'm the boss, so I get to tell you what to do. That's very much a non-starter for the younger world that's coming to work. The young professionals that are coming to work these days, they want a lot more feedback. And if you're going to be a great leader in today's organization, you need to give people choice, and you need to socialize ideas with them, gather the information around their ideas around your strategies, and then assemble an alliance of people that can actually do the work, the structure to do the work, assemble the alliance of people around them to get the work done. And then something that's left off a lot, but in most companies fail to stop and confront how we're doing, to measure how we're improving, whether these are the right strategies to be working on, whether what changes we need to make, and we need to keep going, but we need to be very proactive about those. So really, leadership accountability, you need people around you that will hold you accountable. You want to hold other people accountable, but leadership is all about intention, being able to set a mood around it, being able to have a structure around it, get the work done in an accountable fashion. Check on whether your compliance with what your original ideas were, whether that's working, and then make the suitable changes and go. It's a constant improvement program in the 21st century.
Don, do you want to add to Mark's comments?
Sure. I would add to that. Part of the presentation that I had was, you can you can start this what I call official journey a little too early. I believe too often physicians try to speed into advanced degrees thinking it will prepare them for the next stage. I could tell you what you're hearing tonight is probably better prepped than some of the degree programs and some of the courses we offer. Where I am, we really are suited for someone who's been out of residency 15, 20 years, because the point is you've developed enough scars, as I call it, to learn and to be receptive to learning. And you have to be right for the room in order to, I believe, take the content and frankly go, I've got some lessons learned. I've had some failures, I've had some successes. But bottom line, a lot of physicians move into the leadership space without the proper development of emotional intelligence. That's just my view. And I have worked across all specialties. I've worked with many. And, while most people were out knocking their head against the wall, learning how to deal with others, you were a captured audience in school. And when you step out and try to work with, people of all types, people within the organization up and down, you can't be the physician. You have to sort of enter into their world and communicate in a trusted way. And I believe we have to develop that more because this is really important that you earn not only about yourself and you know that about yourself and you're clear enough to look in the mirror and go, I know who I am, but I also know how to heal myself and move forward and to start a practice and be successful, to lead people along this path. And by the way, lead patients in the direction you want them. If you want to keep the revenue coming, make things sticky. You want people to stick with you and you want patients to stick with you. You have to be likable and you have to have the values that they are looking for now in their trusted healer, as I call it. I think, as I said, that's what I believe is the move forward in leadership. Mark, you said everything you said was right on, and I absolutely support what you're saying and where you go. But doctors have many challenges. You have to take them, I think, in a sequence. You can't do them all at once.
That's great comments, and we got a couple of comments in the chat. Jim Wineblood said, yes, fear is the enemy. So he agrees with that. And then Justin said that you're dropping truth bombs, which is true. And then the other, we got a chat in from somebody from India. So you guys are like influencing people all over the world. We got people from as far as India that have tuned into this deal, and it's going to be continually broadcast, and we're going to keep promoting it. So we're going to continue promoting you guys and the great stuff you did here for us, and we really truly appreciate it. Who's the next question for, Brand?
So this next series is actually for Jim Wineblood, a man after my heart, marketing. And the main question is how do I best measure marketing success in the early days?
Thanks,
And
Brand.
Jim, can I chime in? I think this
Yes,
is appropriate
please.
for
Go
someone
ahead,
who's
go
an
ahead.
employee or starting their own practice. Because really, I mean, they're their brand. So I think it applies to both.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Brand, thank you. Thank you, Clay, and to the whole team here. What a joy. And man, I'm learning stuff and getting reinforced and super excited. Excited for everybody who's listening and about to start down this path. You know, I think I mentioned it in my talk, but you know, I just think keep it simple, right? Right out of the gate, keep it simple. You know, you've got your marketing funnel and you can get all complex and complicated and everything. But if you build your practice from the inside out with customer service as your orientation, connection to the people you're serving at a deep level, right? Really caring, you're setting yourself up for marketing success in a big way. You're differentiating yourself, I guarantee, from a lot of doctors who, you know, I think we've all had the experience of having doctors at times that maybe because of business or whatever's going on in the world, they got this crazy busy practice. You know, maybe they're not quite as connected. But if you can connect with your patients and if you can, you know, give them an experience of real deep care, you're going to get incredible word of mouth. You're going to get people sharing all about you, and you're going to grow by word of mouth, the most powerful marketing that there is. That's the testimony of a trusted referral. And so that's the first thing I would do is, you know, just focus on the simple blocking and tackling of being great at the point of attack. Great service. And then you've got just, am I getting leads? Am I converting them into customers? And then when they come out the other side, are they giving me great testimonials? Are they reflecting back to me that they loved the experience? That's where I'd start.
Great answer. And it reminds me of the quote from the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu. He says, man at his best like water serves as he goes along. That doesn't mean man, it means like mankind, not
Right.
man or woman, but that's true. We got a couple of comments in the chat. Justin Cockerell says, get cyber insurance, which absolutely you need to do. I know Maria is like itching to talk about her.
That was Maria.
She's coming up next. So yeah.
Actually, did I send that to the group? My bad. So, and this was called the quote unquote boring presentation, but it has the second most views. So obviously it seems to be catching an ear or an eye. In addition to malpractice coverage that my group covers, what other coverages should I consider? And she also brought up the cybersecurity coverage also. Can you chime in on that?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, on the Justin had great information on the cybersecurity, and it is a huge exposure right now. And there is something that is a solution that can help you when you have a situation that is unexpected, inconvenient, and extremely stressful. And that is if you get hacked, or I think somebody mentioned about being, you know, ransomware. And then what do you do? Who do you call? I actually had a situation not 2 weeks ago. She's at the Masters trying to enjoy herself, and she gets a call at 1 a.m. She's supposed to meet a lot of the players the next morning. She gets a call. She's a CEO of a $32 million company, and she finds out that she's a designer, but she has a company that was hacked, and all her vendors' information was exposed. Her client information was exposed. She works with property owners, property managers. Now, obviously, she's not a doctor, but the exposure is still there, getting hacked. And there is a component within your cyber insurance that will help you. Who do you call at 1 a.m. and away from your domiciled headquarters? And it's something called crisis management. And your insurance carrier is there because effectively it's taking that exposure off of you. And what do I do? And you put it on to them, and they're the ones who are going to come in, swoop in, and hopefully take control and get you back up and running as soon as possible. And also be helpful in mitigating any further loss of them then diving deeper into your software and then maybe getting into your financial information. Other than medical malpractice, your biggest piece, I would say, would be getting cybersecurity, cyber information, cyber insurance, along with employment practice liability. One of the third biggest losses is going to be for not just wrongful termination or failure to hire, but it's hostile work environment. That's another big one, along with sexual harassment. Again, in all these things, it doesn't mean you actually did it. It just takes one person to accuse you, and anybody can accuse you of anything at any time. And you're really buying defense. So it is imperative that you buy these type of policies. I didn't get, what was the second half of the question, or did I cover it?
But that's so important. I mean, somebody slip and fall on your property, you know, that is so important. You're totally.
Yes, it is. Yes, and a lot of people will come in, you're especially vulnerable in the first 12 to 16 months of being open. Fraudsters will actually target you, knowing that you're new, inexperienced, and sometimes what we call chronic frauds, okay? They will come in and hit 4 corners. They'll go to the Taco Bell, the dermatologist, the Dunkin' Donuts, and the tire store, and fall at all 4 corners and hit you all up. And so it is, you know, there are professionals out there, they're crime rings. And in that, you know, the first vulnerability months, again, 12 to 16 months, you could be a target. And so you just want to make sure you have these type of policies in place. A business owner's policy is pretty inexpensive. Where the expensive piece comes in right now is going to be the property piece, which is going to be insuring your high valued equipment. And of course, med-mal, and cybersecurity. And aside from you purchasing health insurance, medical insurance for your employees, med-mal will be your second most expensive expense on your balance sheet.
Great answer. Very important. So that's so critical for everybody to understand. Brand, I think we might have one last question.
Yeah, we have, actually we have 3 more. I know we're coming up on an hour, so thank you, everyone. When I was speaking to Dr. Cockerell earlier today, I was thinking this would be 30 minutes max. So, I mean, this has been really good.
Great information.
We are recording it. This one is actually for Jennifer and Chris. It says, I'm planning to stay in the DFW area. Do you cover the Fort Worth area? And of course, are your rates negotiable? So I don't know how to comment on that.
Everything in real estate is negotiable. Rule number 1, real estate, all things are negotiable. Yes. We do cover parts of Fort Worth, South Lake, West Lake, North Lake, everywhere over there. If it's something we don't know, we will happily get you a referral and be able to follow along with whomever we refer you to. So you'll have 2 agents.
Got a couple that's still married working together. That's a major
That's huge. If I play tennis, and if I play with my wife, that'd be a divorce. So congratulations to y'all. So,
thank you.
The next one is, and I'll kind of speed this up a little bit, for Mallory. It says, I'm beginning my interview process. Are there certain questions, it says to avoid, or maybe, I mean, it's, you know, or what are the top 3 things that you should maybe definitely ask and stay away from, or not top 3, but something like that?
If we're doing it from the perspective of the employer interviewing potential candidates for a position, you really ought to avoid the traditional, tell me a little about yourself question, because you are now inviting someone to tell you all kinds of information that you don't want to have, like about their age, their marital status, perhaps that they have a disability, things that if you chose not to hire them, they could say, it's because of that reason, even though it had nothing to do with that. We have a very litigious society, and unfortunately, the way it is, a lot of people these days will say, I was discriminated against for fill in the blank, right? So you want to avoid questions that are going to get information about someone belonging to any kind of protective class. So religion, nationality, even something as simple as, oh, your accent's so interesting. Where are you from originally? That's illegal. We can't ask questions like that. So you want to make sure the best rule of thumb is to just keep all of your questions specific to the job, and then do your cultural fit behavioral based questions too. So present situational type scenarios to find out what they might do, or ask about past performance and achievements, that kind of thing, but keep it based on the job and not so much about them as a person.
Great answer. In my lecture, I talked about the fact that, Jack Welch was probably about 75–80% effective at hiring people. Us mere mortals are probably about 20 to 30%. So that's way harder than practicing medicine. So she's a pro at this. So listen to what she says.
Can you also hit it from the other's perspective of maybe some questions that will, Dr. Cockerell made the comment of 3 residents, were brought in over 300 CVs. When a prospective employee is interviewing, are there things that they can say to help them rise above the noise? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So it's going to vary based on what you're applying for, right? So you always want to do research. That's something that, we do recruiting as well. And when we're talking to hiring managers, when we're going through different candidates, the ones that are really going to stand out to us the most are the ones that have done their homework. They have gone and figured out what exactly are we looking for. They know that job posting like the back of their hand, and they have put together really thoughtful questions. So not just your generic, where do you, see your practice going, or where do you see this in the next 10 years? Kind of like the flip side of what you would get asked. Or about the development opportunities, or like to stay away from the things that's what's in it for you. Instead, you want to ask things like, what can I learn from this role that I won't get an opportunity to learn anywhere else? What kind of mentorship opportunities are there, both for me and for other people down the line, things like that. But you really have to tailor it specifically to each job. But I will say one thing: if you want to get selected, it's going to be far more about attitude than it ever will be about technical skill.
I would agree with that 100%. We're like, everybody's got the same CV basically by the time they interview with us. They've all got the papers, they've got the great letters, they've got the great scores. So they're trying to differentiate themselves from the others. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that's got leadership potential. They really want to be a contributor. They're like eager, they're enthusiastic. They've got the 4 E's and 1 P that Jack Welch talks about. So that's what we're looking for when we're trying to hire our basically Nobel laureate quality people. So any other questions, Brand? Or are we almost
I
at
have,
the end?
one final question, and then I sent a text out to the group. This is for Scott Hemingway, who gave a very good talk on patents, copyrights, trademarks, etc. And it says, if I work for a group and design something new, does the group keep my idea, or is it mine?
So presumptively, when you invent something or you create something, normally your rights go to the author or the inventor, but there are assignment rights that groups normally have employees or group members sign as part of becoming a member of the group, and those will convey rights from you to the LLC or the corporate entity that's running the group, and they will become an asset of the business. So it depends on what you sign and what the contracts say. Oftentimes, this is part of your employment package, that you may have assignment agreements or some type of agreements that you'll need to sign. And sometimes you'll have non-disclosure agreements, non-solicitation agreements, proprietary rights agreements, non-compete agreements, and at the end of it, you'll have assignment agreements. And it depends on the group that you join and what the group requires. But that's a fairly normal thing for most big, well-structured businesses. May not be universal though. So.
Well, before you sign anything, and I think Mary said this in her lecture too, get somebody like Scott or Mary or Jeff or something to look at anything. Never sign anything, nothing, without having a good, high quality, intelligent attorney look at it. And they'll tell you where your negotiating points are. You can go and say, I don't want to assign you the rights to something I might invent when I'm sitting in my home, when I don't have, not working for you, because a lot of them, they want to reach into that. Or they may say, you may read the non-employment agreement, the non-competition agreement may be way too aggressive. Don't sign those things. You know, lawyers view contracts differently than doctors do. We view them as almost like the 10 commandments. We have to follow them or we're going to go to hell. You know, lawyers view them as like, it's an open sort of thing to negotiate on. And they breach contracts all the time. And they negotiate those in court and they move on. But doctors don't view them that way. So we need to learn that we have the ability to negotiate on contracts also. And we don't have to sign take it or leave it contracts. And even if we do, you can still get those modified after the fact if you happen to sign something that's not favorable. We have professionals like Scott and others that can help you deal with that. So
Yeah,
with that, I
that's
think, Brand, we're kind of approaching our 1 hour time. I don't want to.
Yeah, we went over just a little bit. I will say, Mary Nix, who does the employment legal, unfortunately, she couldn't be on the Zoom this evening. But her main takeaway from her video is get it reviewed up front and almost plan your escape up front, because if you try to do it after the fact, you're dead in the water.
Totally correct.
So
and that's
always,
so
always have legal review contracts. Scott, go ahead.
I often tell clients it's if you're going to spend $10 up front, then you're going to spend $100 unraveling it on the back end after it's screwed up trying to correct it. So it's always 10 times or more expensive to unravel it after the fact and to try to correct it than to just get it done correctly up front.
Absolutely correct.
Perfect. Before we call it a night, any other questions from the attendees? You're welcome to come off mute or you can shoot something in chat. Otherwise, we will call it an evening.
And I want to thank every single person that's on this Zoom call tonight and everybody that gave a talk. I mean, this is so valuable. And everybody that's listening to this, please, these guys are the best in the world. I mean, these are the world's experts at what they're talking about. I couldn't recommend any of these people higher. So please, if you've got these kind of issues that you're dealing with, these are your resources too. And the good news is that their contact information is online. It's there forever. So please go for it. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for attending.